and welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host, Adam, and we're opening up with a little bit of The Smiths. And if anybody can actually guess what movie this is from, it's a recent one. It's a recent film that has recently debuted on Netflix called The Killer. But thank you for tuning in tonight on WLSD, WLSDradio.com. And before we get into the show tonight, please go to all of our social media pages. That's the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Much appreciated if you go there and visit. Check out a lot of past shows, and they are updated weekly. Almost daily, to be honest with you. The shows are really almost updated. I do 3 shows a week. Real Talk, The Dark Place, and The Other People Show. So 3 a week, and they're pretty much updated the very next day. But this is going to be a fun episode tonight. It's going to be... I'm not going to give away many spoilers. Last week we did the most recent horror film that came out, Thanksgiving. Tonight we're doing a movie that came out, I think it came out at the beginning of November. I've watched it almost 3 times. It's called The Killer. And it's about, after a fateful near miss, an assassin battles his employers and himself on an international manhunt he insists isn't personal. So here he is. We'll get into that in just a minute. I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. So this stars... this has very few actors and actresses, just a handful. Michael Fassbender, Tilda Swinton, and Charles Parnell are 3 of the main leads. Directed by David Fincher. Now, if you go into David Fincher's filmography, it goes all the way back to Alien 3. He was brought on, he had 0 creative control, and you see that it turned out to be Alien 3. His next movie was the masterpiece 7. And if you've heard me talk on the show before, which I know you have, then you know that my praise for the movie 7 never goes away. It's one of those movies, it's probably one of the best serial killer movies that I've ever seen. It's a slow build, but it's atmospheric, it's engaging, you get to know the characters, you even get to know John Doe. So it's a treat, a methodical treat, and a milestone in cinema. 7. He followed that up by The Game, Michael Douglas, Fight Club, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, Panic Room with Jodie Foster, and then we have Zodiac, which had Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. He followed that up with The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which was another Brad Pitt movie. And then you had The Social Network, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl with Ben Affleck. Mank was a 2020 film from Netflix, which I haven't seen, and The Killer. So I have seen every David Fincher film except Mank. And this was kind of interesting to me, was that I really didn't realize until this film that David Fincher had signed a 4-year deal, 4-film deal with Netflix. So his next 2 movies will be produced and exclusively on Netflix. Although The Killer did go to a few cinemas, not many. I looked it up because I was willing to travel a small distance to see it on the big screen. Nashville was the closest, so I was like, well, I'll just lay here, or I often do exercise when watching movies. Sit-ups, push-ups, things of that nature, and I did that through the movie The Killer. So this is a Netflix film. So it's very odd. This movie, the budget was listed, from what I could find, from $175 million to $200 million. Now, I do know that Netflix has dropped pretty pennies on budgets before, like the Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot feature. What was it called? Red Nose, maybe? I didn't watch it. So they do shell out big money. But I did not see this movie looking like it cost $200 million. Now, the movie looked good. Nothing was wrong with the film. It looks amazing. It looks great. It looks gritty, but yet chic and slick. The angles are great. It's typical David Fincher fare. The story is not as... I'm trying to watch my tongue because I don't want to give away anything. But back to the budget. From what I could find, $175 to $200 million. It only made $362,000 worldwide, but that's not how Netflix measures success with their films. Now, I did keep tally, and this movie was in the top 10 every week up until last week. They were in the top 10. Well, not they, but the movie was in the top 10. And it wasn't today when I checked. I rewatched a few scenes earlier. But, it's an enjoyable movie. But it doesn't look like it cost as much as it says it does. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. This has an 86% positive on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just 3% more than Thanksgiving last week, which is kind of odd. Because horror movies, obviously, especially in the slasher genre, like last week, they rarely get that high. That high of a score. And this one did. So that being said, you've got a 6.9 IMDb rating, which I find that a little more accurate than I would find the Rotten Tomatoes, because Rotten Tomatoes are just critics, and these could be critics across the board, to be honest with you. So I never really. I do look at it, but I never decide, yes, I'm going to a movie, or no, I'm not going to a movie based upon Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is 62% positive, and I can see why. This is not a movie for everyone. This is not a movie that everyone is going to enjoy. So a few little facts about the film is that it is based upon a graphic novel called The Killer, written by Alexis Nolant. It's illustrated by Luc Jacquelemont, and has been a passion project of David Fincher for nearly 20 years. So now he's at the point in his career when he is able to do basically what he wants to do. And that's what he's doing. He's making the movies and the kind of films that he wants to make, because does he have a weak film? Sure, there's a couple weak films in there. but they're all basically pretty good films, pretty solid all across the board. And I think that most people would agree with that. Like I said, this is a second feature in a 4-year exclusive deal between David Fincher and Netflix. So the first being Mank. So like I said, this is film number 2. So I'm not sure the budget of Mank. It seemed to be more of a low-key affair. This is a low-key film as well, but it deals with, violent content. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? I'm sure it does. So that's a little bit, this is a little bit more in line what you've come to expect probably from David Fincher. This, it's not dark in the way that Seven or possibly Fight Club or even Zodiac is dark. It's not dark in that regard, but it's very nihilistic. It's very sociopathic, while also trying to tell a very, a good story. And I don't want to be like a lot of other critics have said, is that the story is over, the substance is over the story. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I do see how people could say that, and I've seen and read a couple of comments on, various social media places that said that it's cold, it's calculated, it looks great, but you don't feel for any of the characters. And I do agree with that assessment. I agree with that assessment 100%. Now, those of you that have watched the film, this is a cool little thing. You may have noticed this. But if you haven't watched the film, you should watch. So there's many times where the killer, he's not given a name, where he's traveling and giving his, various passports, identification, things of this nature. And he uses names of men from old TV series, sitcoms, such as Felix Unger, The Odd Couple, Archie Bunker, All in the Family, Oscar Madison, also The Odd Couple, Howard Cunningham, which is Happy Days, Reuben Kincaid, which is from The Partridge Family, Lou Grant, Mary Tyler Moore in The Lou Grant Show, Sam Malone, Cheers, George Jefferson from The Jeffersons, and Robert Hartley from The Bob Newhart Show. So he uses all these elements, aliases, when going to these various places and traveling abroad and internationally and all these things like that. So it's kind of cool, and it's a little wink and a nudge, and kind of a throwback to yesteryear, I guess you could say, yesteryear. Also, like I said, the Smiths are virtually the only songs other than score that are played in the background. Now, there's a pretty decent score to this movie as well, but the Smiths, I knew that going in, but the Smiths, they play, the killer listens to several Smith songs when preparing for the job. His routine that he walks you through, and things such as this nature. So, and also another little fun fact is that Michael Fassbender and Tilda Swinton both play characters from the Marvel Universe. Fassbender as a young Magneto, and Swinton as Ancient One. I don't know Ancient One. I'm not seeing that. Probably. I'm not seeing that one, I guess. So let's get into a little bit of the plot of The Killer. Not going to give away spoilers since it's a fairly recent film. And the original score is by Trent Reznor. and Atticus Ross. So, like I said, it starts off after a faithful near miss. An assassin battles his employers and himself on an international manhunt he insists isn't personal. So, what propels the story, and you can read this in any synopsis, is that he's a cold, calculated assassin. He follows a code of conduct and rules. Rules that only he can control about himself. How meticulous he is with each detailed thing that he does within the routine that he does. So he's getting ready to take out a target. He says in there he doesn't care what side you're on. A target is a target. And a job is a job. I just don't give a crap, basically. So he misses the target. And as soon as he misses the target, he lets the employer know, and then he knows he's going to have to pay consequences. He gets back to his residence, and this is hours upon hours later because he has to board a plane and all this kind of stuff. But his wife or his girlfriend, whichever, it's never really clear, it doesn't say, is almost beaten to death. She's bruised. She's battered. And he's out to get revenge upon those that ordered this to happen. So that's basically it's a simple plot. It's a basic revenge story. And there's a lot of voiceover. The killer doesn't really speak a lot to other people. He's mainly speaking to himself, the audience, and voiceover. And I think that's where this is kind of a unique perspective from the assassin, from the killer. Just due to the fact that we don't get a lot of voiceovers from the past. We've got the characters. We've got the killer. We don't have that many characters. We've got maybe 3 or 4 characters, and they're inconsequential. Really, they're interchangeable. The movie isn't really about any other character other than the killer, because the killer is not really close to anyone that you can tell, except maybe himself. That's why you have these voiceovers. He probably is close with his wife or his girlfriend, but the main battle, other than the battle to get revenge on those that evoked harm upon a loved one, is if he sticks to his code and he sticks to his very strict and controlled ritualistic routine, then he knows that he will be successful in extracting revenge. And that's what he does. That's what he tries to do. I'm not going to say whether he does or not. I really do like my the least favorite scene. I don't know if there's a really... I thought the movie went relatively quick. It's very subtle, and it's a slow burn. So it's not, action, because most aren't. There's a great action sequence. One of the main action sequence is in the middle of the film, I would say. Probably the beginning of Act 3 or end of Act 2. A really great fight scene choreographed, great. Cinematography, excellent. The score, as you're listening now, some thought was put in. It wasn't just your typical run-of-the-mill action score, because this isn't your typical action movie. It's more on the side of like Drive. We talked about Drive maybe a couple months back, and this would be very comparable to. It's presented as maybe an action thriller, which it is in some regard, but it's more of like a slow burn revenge thriller with a few action pieces. Originality, I mean, what's original about this movie is not the story being told, but in the manner in which it's told. So the story is basically a tale as old as time, getting revenge. But the way this movie is told is a little bit different than some of the others that you have probably seen. So I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to reveal too much either. The poster, I posted it on the Other People Show Facebook page, Ryan Parker. I think WLSD's page maybe. It's a cool poster. You can go on the IMDb and check it out. There's a couple variations. Michael Fassbender with a bucket hat, some gloves, and a looks like a 9mm with a silencer on it. You've got the killer, and then you've got like a bullet hole over the knocked down eye, which looks like somebody lying there. So it's kind of a cool little graphic and a nice little, but it's in like kind of a painted mosaic kind of a look, I guess. Would I recommend The Killer? I would recommend The Killer if you want a slow burn of a movie. It falls in line of maybe The Game, Panic Room. It's not a Seven or Fight Club or even The Game, but I would guess Panic Room. I guess you could put The Game in there. I think The Game might be a little bit more mind-bending than this. And you don't really feel connection to the characters. I didn't. And that was a lot of complaints that I had read as well. But I do think this isn't a bad way to spend, I think it's an hour and 55 minutes maybe. It's not a bad way to spend those minutes. If you haven't seen it, you like David Fincher's work, you watch the trailer, you like movies that are, it's a quiet movie. It's really quiet. And that's part of the appeal. Because you get the insight into how this killer, this assassin, is thinking as he's going through the motions of preparing to take out someone. So it's very cool in that regard. I would say if you have Netflix, you don't have much going on this weekend, give it a shot, give it a chance, and I think you will enjoy it. If not, you can press pause or stop the movie. There's no harm in that. Next week, a special guest is coming in studio. We're going to be diving into Silent Night, Deadly Night, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So kind of a short show tonight. I didn't want to give away too much because this is a brand new film, and I don't want to reveal too much. But if you want to go back and listen to any of the past shows, if you want to go back and watch any of the sketches, there's a lot of like sketch comedy. There are a couple of mystery series on there, a couple of slapstick sketches and series on the Other People Show channel. You can do that on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Please give us a like and a share. Very much appreciated. And stay tuned for another episode of The Other People Show in just a moment.